Welcome to Chop Shop Motors. My name is Clay, and we're kicking off kind of the new year with a project that I touched on, but I don't believe we have the video anymore, any of the content anymore on this. So I'm going to give you a little overview and get you up to speed on this project. It's a 1932 Ford pickup that I'm building, and it's a really cool little truck, and I'm excited to be putting it together. You know, some of the projects, especially the project that we just wrapped up with a ton of work on, was the 30-day truck build, which was bringing that little 55 F100 to life. And it was, you know, really how do we put together a little truck and start to finish have, you know, a limited amount of cash in it. And I think we were under $2,000 in that whole 55 Ford pickup project, which is really cool. And this 32 pickup, it's not quite that same kind of project. We're not trying to do it on the cheap, but we're using a ton of parts that are, you know, maybe cast-offs of other projects or accumulated over time, and which is really fun. That's kind of hot rodding at its essence. So, but it isn't going to be a low budget, cut rate, cut corners kind of project. So it's going to take a lot more time, and it'll have a lot more work invested in it, and I'm cool with that. So I would love to take you through kind of where we are today. Today's a big day in that we're gonna leave my buddy's house that it's been at for a couple years, kind of stop and go. And we lost a year. I mean, I didn't work on it all last year because of COVID. So I just picked up the speed on it again in the last 2 weeks, and we're really busting a hump to get it out of his shop. And I would love to show you what we're doing and explain kind of, you know, what the vision is behind it. So let me flip the camera around and show you some of the progress and some of the thought behind it. So this is the beginning, and quite honestly, we're way past the beginning, but this is the foundation for a 1932 Ford Highboy pickup. The basis of this project is a set of factory frame rails that you see in the middle here. They're model 18, which is a V8 car or truck, is the starting point. And on the front half, the frame had been damaged substantially. It was really just a pile of frame parts when I got it, and the front had some other stuff grafted to it, so it had been modified multiple times. And you know, it was probably purchased out of some scrap yard somewhere or something, I'm guessing. But anyway, the front has a 32 commercial front sub grafted to it. So there's quite a bit of work in grafting a 32 commercial to this passenger car light truck midsection. And then in the back we have a set of aftermarket kick-ups over the rear end, just because I couldn't locate any factory material for that back part. But it works out quite well. So let me kind of take a slow pass over it, and I'll start at the front and we'll kind of explain what's going on. So at the front, using a commercial 1-ton type frame poses a couple hurdles, in that the frame starts out the same at the front, in that dimensionally the sheet metal will interchange, grill shell, things like that will interchange, hood will interchange. As you get farther back, the frame starts to get substantially thicker than what it would be, taller than what it would be as a passenger car. So it's thicker in dimension, so it is stronger, but we had to pie cut the bottom of it to take a little bit of the metal out of the bottom. So That's why you see a little bit of a weld there on the bottom. When I'm all done grinding on this, final welding's all done, which hopefully will be today, and I spend 40 hours or so doing the prep work, you won't even be able to tell what's going on there. So we use this commercial frame, super tough, still has the DNA of a 32. We cut the front cross member and brought it up. I am using the factory cross member, but I did raise it so we could bring the front of the car down a little bit. On the front is an early dropped axle that I bought probably from the 50s. It originally was a chromed axle and it had long since lost its chrome. So it's going to get painted, but it is an original chrome or original dropped axle. It has cross steer spindles on it because that is one decision I haven't quite solidified yet. We go back just a little bit more, kind of giving you these details just so you have an overview of what parts I've mixed together. It's got a stock 32 spring. It has a set of radius rods that are 46 Ford. And the reason I want to use these is, if you notice, it has a kick up because of what it came off of, and that kick up is going to allow us to run the tie rod underneath it with minimal spindle modification. So I didn't have to adjust the spindles very much to make that all work, and that's kind of cool. And I've seen that on a couple period cars. You just don't see it very often. Most people don't use those. So that's one altercation, or one altercation? That's one modification. Change from regular hot rod lore. Inside we have I think it's a chassis engineering X-member that is used in the original chassis portion, which is super tough, really works well. It beefs up this part of the frame, allows us to really pull that frame straight and get all the dimensions right. In the back, we used a pickup point right at the transmission for the rear radius rods. The front of the rear radius rods will pick up there. We come back right to here. The inside of the frame, especially at the splice, is boxed and fish plated, so it's going to be super strong. Back here we have a Bronco rear end to keep the wide 5.5 inch bolt pattern and keep a 9 inch. It has hairpins, panhard bar, and a transverse leaf rear spring. So that should work out quite nicely. It's really, coming together over time and doing exactly what I wanted. The rear spring and the rear cross member were donated, and they're 34 Ford. We flattened the rear cross member to get the back of the car down, but it still has the curved rear spring. So that's why the pickup points on the rear end angle out a little bit. It's because that spring's not really straight, and that's going to work out quite nicely. Back here you see the aftermarket rear frame horns, which were just a necessity to keep the project going. So other elements that are of interest, if we stay on the frame, inside here you'll see a pocket in the X-member, and that's because I'm using a Ford Warner T10 4-speed out of a 64 Ford, and we need a little extra room for the shifter mechanism. Up front we'll have a Y block, so I've got a 292 that's already built for it, and it's ready to go. We'll finish up some of the finishing touches on the motor mounts and things today, but that's more or less the extent of kind of what's going on up here. As far as what the frame is sitting on, the truck, the 1-ton truck, we use the front sub to build the frame, but we use the back of the frame as the jig. So I know a lot of guys have super high dollar jigs, and that's pretty doggone slick. But I'll be honest with you, I've seen some really cool race cars built on a concrete floor if you take the care to make sure everything's level. So we built this frame, we made sure everything was level, then we built uprights and welded them so that they would hold the frame in the dimensions we needed, and the frame, it worked out great. It isn't beautiful, it's a little primitive, and it won't make it to any publications, but it sure is, sure has worked well for us, and I'll keep it because I've got another frame I need to build. So that, in a nutshell, is pretty much this 32. It's too bad it took 5 minutes to explain it and probably 2 years to get it to this point, but that's kind of the way it is. I appreciate the help of friends along the way. My close friend Earl has really helped me in the building, and it's been fantastic. He's a consummate craftsman, and his background is all about safety, so everything is thought through from you know, how are we going to make sure that this has longevity. That's kind of where we're at. The next pieces you see might be a video on us loading it up and taking it out of here. I think we'll be ready to take it out of here next week and get it to my shop, and then from then on you'll start to see us problem solving, start to see me problem solving on other pieces like headlight bars and steering box mounts and some of that stuff. But a lot of the really heavy duty fabrication is behind us. It's titled, it's good to go that way. We have a goal set to get to deuce days in Victoria in a year and a half, and so I've got to keep the fire lit to make it there on time. I'm Clay at Chop Shop Motors, and I can't wait to show you more on this project.